again, honestly, like haven't really thought about that too much. Like I've fantasized in ways like, man, if I could just be like back home living with my parents and doing drawing all day, then I'd be improving so much faster.
Hmm.
Or at least it seems that way. But like when you think about the realities of like, well, I'd be all alone. I wouldn't have any environment around. I wouldn't have any professional instructors around. I wouldn't, have everything that I have here. Then it's like maybe you wouldn't really be
It would be harder
doing as good
somehow.
as you'd think.
What was your introduction to art? Can you remember, like, as a
Hmm.
kid, what you were into, or what your first memories were of, like, just artistic in general? Were you drawing? Were you into,
Yeah.
like, what were you into?
Yeah, let's start by
Yeah, yeah.
explaining. I imagine that we already started, so let's start by explaining who Travis is.
Okay.
Like Travis,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Travis is an
Let's start
illustrator,
from scratch.
a friend of mine. We met at Watts.
Friend of mine.
Yeah, a friend of
You're a
yours
friend of.
Both.
too, friend of all of ours.
Yeah.
But bigger friend of mine.
No.
and and he's now doing 3 classes, I think, as an instructor at Watts now, right?
Mhm. Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. Um, just getting started with that this term, pretty new to the teaching and everything. Um, and obviously there's some big shoes to try to fill there, so just got to try to keep working on it and keep going forward, and hopefully I can sustain that for a long time and keep getting better.
How do you started in art, like in general? Like, what's your
Yeah.
background? Like, how do you got into it?
Um, well, I'd always been doing little, just like a lot of people, little sketches and drawings and stuff like that when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And, just keeping sketchbooks and trying to like draw, I don't know, go out in the world and draw like parked cars and, you know, like just sketching around from life and stuff. And also trying to do like characters and things like that. It's funny. I can send you guys some images actually,
Yeah,
if you want. I've
yeah.
got
I'll put it
a
right
little
up here.
sketchbook. I've got a little sketchbook that I had when from the time I was about 6 years old to 8 or so, I
Wow.
think. And it has all kinds of really funny, just characters. And you really get to see like how creative kids are, I think,
Yeah.
with something like that, because I was like designing all these environments and like castles based on different elements. There was like a mud castle and a lightning castle and just like this weird stuff that like only a kid would think of. And then lots of like ninjas and things like that.
That's so cool. Can you
Um,
remember though before
mm,
that, like what actually? I mean, usually when you start drawing, it's because, or for me at least, it was because of something I saw, like a book
mm.
I read, or something like. I remember my mom used to buy these little books for me when I was a kid, and she'd read them to me. So was there like stuff you were exposed to when you were younger?
Um, I think in particular around that age when I was just first getting started doing some sketching and things like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think I don't think there was really anything in particular maybe besides my dad would draw from time to time, and my grandma was an artist as well. And she was always really artsy and kind of an old hippie and into lots of cool stuff, and probably some exposure through that, and just I don't know, I think maybe just kind of inherently it was just something that was present in our family, so I just kind of started doing it without really even thinking about it. And later on, when I really started to watch like anime and cartoons and things like that, is when I think it picked up a bit more and made me more excited. Especially a big one was watching Naruto, old
Yeah.
anime, and that was something um, that really inspired me a lot. And actually, recently, while I've been working on some longer paintings and stuff, I went back and started watching it again, and it's man, it just fills you with like determination and resolve to want to keep going forward.
Oh yeah.
Um, so it's kind of Yeah, I'd say that's some of the beginnings of it.
Nice. So how do you get back into how do you get to Watts? What how how
Yeah.
how do you find out about it?
Um, well, yeah, it's kind of an interesting story where as I was in high school, and I never took any art classes in high school or anything like that. I was really pretty horrible during that time. I didn't have any kind of, training or instruction or anything like that. So, and I never really did any art all through school, really. And towards my later years in high school, I was actually also really into music, and I was trying to like play with the jazz band as a guitarist and write music for them and stuff. And that's what my whole project senior year was about, doing that kind of thing.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, yeah, I wish I still had what had written for them, but somewhere along the way I lost it. Um, but yeah, so I was really into music and playing guitar, and even then I was really fascinated by kind of like the more classical approach of things, where I felt like some of the old master composers and stuff, there was like so much to learn there in terms of tradition and things like that. So I think that helped kind of set the ground for my interest in academic art and things like that too. Was just looking into the past and seeing people um, who are really considered some of the best people ever, and trying to find some ways in which I could learn from that. And I eventually got out of high school and still was pursuing music and everything like that. Um, and doing some sketching in this coffee shop, bookstore, and I was just trying to draw in my sketchbook really shitty drawings. And this dude came up to me and he's like, and I actually found the sketchbook that I was working in when this all happened. It has my first drawings from Andrew Loomis in it and everything. But this guy
Nice.
recommended to me. He's like, "Hey, if you're trying to learn how to draw, you should pick up one of the Loomis books and see what that's about." So, and yeah, so he recommended that to me, and I started drawing from Loomis as much as I could, and Bridgman and stuff like that. And eventually, just through going online and looking up stuff about Loomis and how to draw, and how to you happen upon a lot of the stuff that Stan Prokopenko did.
Mm.
Um, how to draw eyes, how to draw noses, that kind of stuff. And that was through those like little breadcrumbs of finding Loomis and then Bridgman and then looking up more and more. And there were some other people posting videos at that time of just, I think, students from the school, from Watts. And
Okay.
I saw all these people using like a similar technique with this weird pencil, and I was like, "What is this about?"
The weird pencil?
And
What weird
yeah,
pencil?
The
like
overhand.
it's a
Oh,
yeah,
like
charcoal pencil,
holding
sharpened
it
really
like
long, and
this.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and from there I discovered the school had the online program, and just kind of went forward from there. I did the online for about a year, and then decided that I was gonna move out and come to the in-person school.
Mm.
And so I sold my car. I ended up quitting my job that I was at for a while, and
Sacrifices.
yeah, yeah. And this was
Damn.
when I was about 20, I think. I did that. So did all that stuff, and then
That-
basically moved out and came here and started studying and working at Starbucks and trying to support myself that way.
Nice.
Yeah, I
So
And
at
that
met
was
that
about
you.
three
point,
years ago.
Yeah, I met you when you were waking up at 4 a.m. to
Yeah.
work at
is
Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
remember that. That
and
was
then
a fun
half of the
time.
time going to Watts and then
Hmm.
going back home and then doing
Hmm.
it all over again.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. And
Right.
I gotta say that Travis is might be one of the most hardworking young guys that I've ever met. Like it's just
thanks, man.
you're I don't know if it thanks or not because it's like You just like plow ahead, man. And I think that is it has worked a lot for you because right now you're then you started moving up from doing all that. Then you quit
Mhm.
Starbucks later on, right?
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting how that ended up happening because I was working for Starbucks for a while. I was working full time, and I was able to pay all my rent, pay all my expenses, and save a little bit of money aside for classes every term. And then after a while, I actually started working for Jeff at the school, and it started by just doing like a swap for a class where I would basically clean up the whole school and make sure that it stayed really clean and tidy and everything like that. And I would get a class in exchange for that, and that was a great deal for me because it was fairly easy. It would only take like half an hour maybe to clean up the school, and if I did that a couple times a week, then it stayed good and it was um, all solid. And so my working relationship with Jeff in the school kind of started there. And after some time, he just gave me bigger and bigger tasks of working on stuff. I helped him paint like his old studio, painted all the outside of it, and the like did a bunch of yard work, and I can't exactly remember all the details of it, but it was just like a bunch of manual labor type stuff and I was happy to do all that too. And eventually there was some video editing and stuff that needed to be done for the school and filming some of the content and things. So I had um, I had some experience with that kind of stuff at my previous job because I worked at a machine shop and I did some machining and metal work and things like that. But I just had a lot of experience doing completely random stuff because my boss was this really red or like hardworking blue collar guy. I was gonna say red collar, blue collar guy, like where we would do like repairing cars and boats and tearing up floors and painting offices and working with machines and CNC machines and on the lathe and milling machine
Wow.
and putting products together and doing computer work, building out these instruction manuals for how these parts were engineered and made and all kinds of stuff like that. And I also had some web development experience because my dad did a lot of that kind of stuff. So I worked on his website too. And so I had all these like weird eclectic skills that kind of contributed to helping Watts, flesh out more parts of their website and just generally helping out and things. And so now, basically, after years of that, um, I was able to quit Starbucks and just go basically come work full time for the school and take classes here and then eventually keep training and keep trying to get better and eventually now starting to run a couple classes of my own, which is really cool. And hopefully I can continue on that trend and just keep getting better.
Nice. I really want to know at this point or before you joined the school actually, were you aware of like the fantasy industry and in general like D&D, fantasy games and
Yeah.
illustration?
Yeah, um I never really put the pieces together for a while that you could actually be an illustrator for a job. I had heard about like doing concept art and things like that, but I just for some reason never really considered it a job until I was a little bit older and started to realize that there were teachers at the school and there were people out being working professionals doing art for a living. Um, but I did have a lot of experience with D&D. I remember when I was in high school, me and my older brother and people would get together and basically play D&D to like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then we'd wake up at 6 a.m. and go to school. And so I was very familiar with D&D and all that. It's really, really quite fun. One of my favorite things to do. And when I got to the school, I had my goals were slightly different, I'd say, because I was going through a big James Gurney phase at the time, when I first got introduced to a lot of art, and I really liked the idea of trying to be an illustrator for National Geographic or something like that, like
Nice.
historical illustration, Greg Manchess, that kind of stuff that they
Mm,
would do. And so that was really my primary goal when I first came to the school originally. But I also found myself really fascinated by a lot of that manga and more stylized type art and things like that. And that's stuff that I still really like to this day and want to try to keep getting better at and get, just do more illustrations with that kind of style. And because I really like that too, for some reason, that really stylized kind of look. Um, and like a lot of people that enter the school, when I first came there, I had these goals, and then I was like, okay, and I want to be a fantasy illustrator for Magic the Gathering because that's what everybody wants to do.
it's classic.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's a pretty common goal
Yeah.
amongst I think anybody who likes fantasy and likes drawing and painting. Um, and someday I will do that.
Nice. That you have.
It's
Oh,
not
so
a
you have
maybe.
it kind
You
of like in
definitely
your
will.
objective. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's in my objectives right now. Yeah.
That's
Um,
cool.
Cool.
Still developing portfolio and more finished images and things like that because although I've got some skills when it comes to academic drawing, and I have some illustrations and things, uh, the next stage of my development is, as far as I see it at least, is really continuing to flesh out my academic and abilities by being teaching and doing things like that, and then also using and that I could do with time in the classroom and time I spend, doing stuff there, and then pretty much all my other time that I'm in the studio, I can now be just working on images and trying to
Yeah.
complete things and bring things more to fruition. So the training part is not necessarily taken care of, but I would say a good 80% of it is just going to be done through teaching people at this point. And then, all my other free time basically that I have for art, which is after hours, after work and everything, and on the
Mm.
weekends, I can, put towards making more complete images and putting portfolio stuff together.
Yeah.
Nice.
Being an instructor for becoming a prolific illustrator, I've heard it's kind of like one of the. It's a very common practice because you kind of like
Mm.
rehash the fundamentals over and over. And
Yeah.
in the meantime, you also are doing like your own personal work. You have kind of like a
Mhm.
you have some sustainability in order to just like dedicate to your personal work and not be
Yeah.
like fighting for freelance and just like
Right.
just murdering each other in order to just like survive in the
Yeah.
dome.
Oh god, yeah.
I see
Uh,
that it's basically the same path that Eric followed and
yeah,
Lucas too.
yeah, yeah.
Both of even though I think Lucas was doing some studio work and stuff not long after he started taking classes here, but that didn't last long before he realized that, that job wasn't really for him and
Mm,
that just trying to focus back more on the fundamentals and getting better and better until you can put together a super solid portfolio
yeah,
and start getting some of the intro work. And that's exactly what Eric did too.
yeah,
And that's what I'm going to do too.
yeah. Well,
I hope.
Lucas also he's a pretty solid professional too as well. So
Mhm.
and also I feel like there has to be kind of like a. I mean, it cannot be faked like to be an instructor. Like you have to like it
Yeah.
regardless. Like
Hmm.
it's not for everybody, and I feel like yeah, you I do feel like I have the idea that you have the kind of personality that falls through with that. You're very patient with people in the good way, and and you're very eloquent with what you want to try to say. You're very organized, and yeah, you have kind of like a love for connecting with people too as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think those are some skills that are definitely important for teaching, and I'm very lucky that I ended up with them. Um, and yeah, teaching it's really cool. Uh, really, I can see so much benefit in it because when you have to verbalize and explain things to people who don't know anything about it, it gives you such a deeper understanding understanding of it, as well as I realized the extreme importance of really going back through all the basic stuff over again. Even somebody at my level
Mm.
and beyond, the more times you really go back through, just like drawing cubes even, and
Yeah.
and showing people how to do that and explaining it and talking about like rendering and light and form and shapes and all this kind of stuff. And then going back through and drawing it over and over and over again yourself, still to this day, at least where I'm at, I just feel like
It's a huge help.
it, yeah, it gives you some kind of, when you start to be able to put stuff together that's more finessed, going back to that stuff gives you just so much more depth that you would have ever realized. And I heard Craig Mullins talking about something similar one time that I thought was really fascinating, where he was just talking about how simple all the aspects of art are.
Yeah.
And they're just straight, simple, straightforward concepts. But for some reason, it's like the hardest thing ever. But it's all so simple. It's like, why is it so difficult? You know? And every artistic problem can be boiled down to some simple solution. But
Yeah.
oftentimes when we're working, it doesn't really feel like that, and that there's a greater complexity as to why something may not be working.
Yeah. We overcomplicate things most of the times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We overthink about it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting subject about like being ready or not being ready, or when is the right time to start taking jobs, or when should I just go back to studying, or should I just dive in the deep end and hope for the best? And
Yeah.
like, there's so many people that I see that wait too long, or others just go in like full force, maybe too early,
Mm.
and then they struggle to like sort of solidify their fundamentals still, and
Hmm.
like they're trying to balance everything at the same time. So in the grand sort of scale of things, you've got a whole lifetime to really
Hmm.
learn and go into the industry or whatever you're going to do. But like, just delaying things for a year, maybe when you're young, or just going in too soon, like a year too soon when you're young. It's quite a long time, because maybe in a year you realize like, oh no, this isn't for me, and I
Hmm.
shouldn't have started doing this whole art thing just because you thought I would have I should be working by now or something, and
Hmm.
then you decide to go off and do another career. It can really change your life. So I
Mm.
want to know, like, what do you think as far as going into like illustrating professionally for you
Hmm.
personally? Do you think it's like something that's gonna be like far off for you, or is it something that you want to start doing like quite soon? Or
Yeah.
how do you feel as far as like your where you are in your
Mhm.
career?
Well, I think there, at least my feeling about it is that there feels to be a pretty natural progression where you do start to wear out one phase, and then as you wear out that phase, you just kind of naturally progress into the next thing, and into the next thing, and into the next thing.
Yeah.
And for myself, at least, starting off with some of that work and things like that, really probably within the next year, starting to just pick up small things, hopefully, and at least the way that I want to do it is just is kind of opposite, as far as I understand, in a way to like maybe how Alex is doing it, where he's just taking every job that
Yeah.
he can.
Yeah, man.
And I hope I'm not misrepresenting by that, but that's just the impression that I get. And that's certainly one way to do it, and I know that that's what, as far as I understand, Felipe did as well. Just understanding about your past is you just take like everything and just get obsessed with trying to work, do a good job, and output a lot.
Yeah.
But as far as some jobs go, I feel like more the right path for me is to just, even if it's something that's pretty basic or pretty minimal, just try to take it and then do the best I can on it and not
Mm.
overextend myself, because it's not like I'm dying for the money right now. I have a job, but if I can take those little jobs as they come in and just do my absolute 100% best at it that I possibly can, then I think that's just going to go to hopefully make me a stronger, stronger artist, stronger draftsman and painter and everything like that, and designer and things as well. But my original goal that I've set out to do was I got to the school when I was 20. I said basically from the time I'm 20 to the time I'm 30 is going to be the time that I'm really going to be training most of the time. And by training, not just doing like head drawings or whatever, but you know,
Building
putting together,
portfolio.
building portfolio and getting proficient at drawing and do that.
Yeah,
So
meeting
20 to
people
30,
too.
that's that. Yeah, networking, all that. And then by the time I'm 30, then I can really maybe start to look for other horizons as far as that thing goes. But even that, to some extent, it really depends on the future of what Watts has for me and what the future of Watts is.
Hmm.
Because how things go, I may be here for pretty much the rest of my life, helping people learn how to draw and things like that, or there may be a time where I move on. I don't really know yet, but I know at least for the next, you know, 5 years, I'm just going to be doing the best I can to teach people and help people learn and trying to keep improving myself. So to answer your question in a long roundabout way, soon, but also in the next 5 years is when I
That's
really
very
plan to
smart.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, when I went to school, I was like, I imagined that I'd learn all the fundamentals in like a year or maybe two tops, and everyone was just looking at me like, "What is this guy thinking? Like, you're gonna make it in 5 years?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this in less than 5 years," and it just takes way longer than you imagine.
Yeah.
So that's very smart of you for like planning out your next 10 years when you were
Mhm.
20. So yeah, what were you gonna say, Felipe?
I was gonna say that the fact that he brings up like not just relaxing at the beginning. I mean, not that you're in a comfortable position, but you're in a very uh, in a good platform where you can just like jumpstart your career in a
Mhm.
straightforward manner. Like in the case you've seen Eric, we've seen other artists do the same thing, and you kind of realize like, oh, there's a path that's been like marked already, and that other people have
Mhm.
done it. And I don't think why I couldn't do it. And I think like due to your personality, like you could do it best. I have the personality where I just want to take every job that I can.
Mhm.
Like the same as Alex. I mean, due
Mhm.
to any circumstances, that we're in. In my case,
Mhm.
I was in Chile. I didn't know what was pretty much illustration. I didn't know many people. I had
Mhm.
like one other person that I was like tagging along with, but everybody else was kind of like pretty much in this unreachable type of distance. So
Yeah.
I felt like if I didn't throw myself into the cave, like I just was not gonna do it at all. So
Mhm.
in the being working at the atelier is an excellent platform for you to just like I mean, to gauge the situation of all of this and just be able to see pretty much like what's your next step and not worry
Mhm.
too much about like the
Yeah.
like, oh, am I gonna get the money of this or not? It's just like
Right.
urging yourself for it and actually concentrate on the quality, which is very important. Like over time I've realized that just worrying too much about money, and it sounds like very privileged, but when you're younger, like you have certain advantages that when you're older you don't. Like when you're
Yeah.
older, you have family, you have to sustain for your
Right.
kids, you have to provide, and maybe you had debt and a bunch of struggle. But when you're younger, you're pretty much like playing at freelance most of the times, and that comes
Mhm.
as a kind of like a good opportunity for you to do really well, really good portfolio, not worry about like counting the pennies sort of way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Um, yeah. As far as, putting stuff together, I feel like there really is a couple different philosophies. And I've heard stories too of people that spend 15 years drawing inside their bedroom and then they come out and they kill it and
Yeah.
do, amazing work. And then there's the other person who's worked their way up and done every job that they possibly could, or, take on it. It's so circumstantial to whatever your life is. Like, I could see myself if I was still back in New Hampshire and living with my folks or whatever, and I was still pursuing art. I would take so much advantage of that, dude, where I would be drawing for like 10 hours every single day, just trying to get better and working on, you know,
Yeah.
every day I would be hitting it. But, if I didn't have to work and stuff. But, that's not the situation that I've landed upon where I have to support myself and try to make it work. And the stars have kind of aligned for me to be in the position that I'm in. But with that, I really, during the weekdays, I get maybe 3 or 4 hours to draw after work.
Hmm.
And then on the weekends, I can get the full day pretty much, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. And that's my time that I get. But if you make efficient use of that time, then I remember you told me something which I'll never forget, where I remember I
Quit
was working
right
on you
now.
with some, yeah, well, yeah, I was working on with you on some project or something. I can't remember what it was, but I remember telling you, I just didn't have time to do this. And you were like, no, don't say that. You have the time. And ever since then, now I get kind of pissed when I hear people say, I just didn't have the time to do this. It's like, no, you had the time. You were just being lazy or you
Yeah.
weren't motivated enough or whatever.
I get the
And I think
same
that
thing
was huge. Yeah.
when I say the same thing to myself. I catch myself a lot saying like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have the time for this."
Yeah. Yeah,
That's so
it's
funny.
a pretty lame excuse.
Yeah.
People are gonna slowly realize how like intense and hardcore you are, Felipe, because
No.
just everyone. I mean, we unfortunately we lost Alex's
And
interview, but I think at some point he was like, "You told me, you said I should do this. You
grr,
told me to go hard."
grr.
So, yeah, you're always giving that sort of advice where you're
But I
like,
think it's
just
because
go hard.
you start realizing how full of shit we all are. Because we say to
Yeah.
our art directors, it's like, and does not count to any art director that is watching this right now that I'm working with, uh, that it's just like, oh, I was sorry, I didn't see it. I was just doing this and this, and I have like four other clients that I'm working with. It's like, dude, you could have just like definitely had the time to just like do the events. You just forgot, or just had like something more interesting to do. Like you push on too much the hours on, like one particular illustration that you were doing, you got caught up, or something. Because that's something
Yeah.
else that happens a lot. But
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, that's, I mean, I will remain to that on that aspect that you always have the time, you just have to make it. Sometimes that's
Yeah.
not the case. There's exceptions. I mean, there are people that have, you know, all sorts of situations going on. I mean, when I went
Hmm.
through my whole visa process that I'm still going with, it's just slower now. I
Yeah.
definitely did not have the time. There
Yeah.
were there were moments where I was just like, I am so stressed because not only I'm working on this, that I'm thinking constantly on this and I can't sleep,
Yeah.
that I just don't have the energy. I look at my notebook and I can't. I will be doing something awful for like 2 hours and that would be it.
Yeah.
I'd rather be outside, you know, going for a walk. That's more
Yeah. Absolutely.
productive.
And sometimes those things are the more productive things to be doing.
Yeah.
Like I remember there's a time when I was a couple of years ago just struggling with just horrible anxiety and having a lot of trouble dealing with it and all this kind of stuff. And I remember it was really hard for me to get anything done because it was taking such a toll on me. And really the best thing for me to be doing was at that time not drawing, but meditating, taking a break, like Felipe said, going for walks, that kind of stuff, just trying to work through some of those problems that I was having. And eventually I got back on track and it was all good. But sometimes, yeah, it's not even about the time, but about the energy and mental clarity that you have.
Yeah. Do you guys actually on the subject? Do you guys have any tips on just dealing with that stuff? If you've got like deadlines or you've got somewhere to be, you've got a class to teach or whatever.
Mm.
If you've got anxiety or if you're just not feeling it or you're depressed or whatever's going on, what do you guys usually do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just got to be honest with yourself about where you're at and what's going on. Because if you have been working hard and you've really been pushing it, um, then I think it is important to say, break time. Because I found a lot of times that some of my biggest anxiety that I had would come from trying to put too much pressure on myself to get better and succeed and do all this kind of stuff. And if I had been working really hard, just take a break. There were
Yeah.
times when I would take a week off, 2 weeks off. I can even remember a couple of times where I took probably like a month off from drawing, really, just because I wasn't in the right mental space for it and I just needed like some decompression time. For me, there's been elements where it's difficult to learn how to relax, like truly relax, where you can be just in that zone and not worrying about everything that you should be doing, but just focus on the moment. Um, but sometimes a break is really necessary. But the danger that can happen sometimes is when you start to feel like that, but you haven't been working hard at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just feel like you can't get anything done and that everything you do is bad and you just don't want to draw or paint or whatever. And and you only worked like one day that week or whatever. Sometimes, at least the way that I trick myself to get out of that as much as I can is when I really feel like that, especially when I feel like everything that I draw is horrible. I try to convince myself that just beyond the horizon of feeling that way is a huge improvement for myself.
Mm.
So if I can keep trying to work through those feelings and those emotions, and as much as I can, try to be stoic about it and just try to not let it get to me too much and just, you know, keep on working, even if it's only sketching for half an hour a day or an hour a day or something. Um, and, just beyond that is going to be your next biggest improvement. At least that's what I try to think about for myself sometimes because I guess it helps me deal with
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
like I don't want to work.
Yeah, working
It's a carrot.
regardless. This is really cool, like dictum, because that I feel like there's always that idea that the inspiration is gonna strike at a certain point, but
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you don't. You're kind of low energy, but you gotta
Yeah,
show up for work anyways. You know.
it's true. It's true. And I try to think of like just all the people throughout history, like people who are like, farmers or fishermen or people of the earth, and how they just always had to show up every day and do it. They
Yeah.
didn't really have a choice, and just try to, but even thinking about like the old school guys like Frazetta or Mobius or something like that, like it was just what they did. They just showed up and worked
Yeah.
and, try to get that within myself as well. But that is actually another pretty practical tip that I'd say is as far as inspiration goes, if you're feeling really unmotivated, just I have a folder on my computer that's called inspiration, and I just look at that and I start to get like feeling really inspired about
Mm.
something that I can do. It's
Nice.
photos of other artwork and
That's
like
cool.
landscapes and just cool, even just like a cool rock or something like that, or a mushroom. So you start thinking like, oh, the mushroom, look at all these weird like gill things on the underside of it, and like, what if this mushroom creature, or like, like your mind just starts going all over the place in terms of like, what can you do with this? Or what if the mushroom was inverted and growing, from the ceiling down and it
That's
hang down
cool.
in kind of a weird way? And I don't know. Yeah, it's like you can really start to tap into your uncreative creativity by just looking at really fun images. So that's more of a practical tip, I'd say. Did you guys have positive or negative high school experiences, or were you always thinking about drawing all the time? I'd be
I
curious
fucking
to know.
dropped out of school.
Oh,
I had
did you?
such a negative experience that I dropped out when I was
Oh
15 because
shit.
I mean, I started freelancing when I was 14. I guess this is a story for another time, but I was doing
Mm.
like graphic design, web design, stuff like that. And then it just got to the point where I couldn't stand school anymore, so it was terrible. I just dropped out.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I went through all the way through high school, and I hated all of it. I mean,
Really?
yeah, it was. I mean, it was fun, like any other high school, but it's just like all hormones and just like
Yeah.
depressed and kind of like I don't know where I'm at. Just like, I don't know what I want to do. Everybody telling you that you need to study a lot and gain all these points so you can do this famous test, so you can go to a place that you need to
Right.
be, and then so you can do the thing that you have to do. And it's all seems like the preparation for the preparation for the preparation of the test that you have to
Mhm.
take. And it
Yeah.
just
So fucking dumb.
it makes no sense.
How about you, Trap?
Yeah, my experience was it was pretty good overall. I definitely like take took chemistry class and math and everything. It was like, wow, this is fun. I don't know, I could find myself getting really into it. Um, and no, my high school experience was it was good overall. When I was a sophomore, I won't get into details here, but I actually got kicked out of high school and when I was a sophomore for just being a troublesome young lad.
A
And
troublemaker.
yeah, which is really not my personality, so it's kind of interesting that ended up happening anyway. But um, I eventually like reapplied to the same high school and the school board and everything, and I went back in. So I missed a year of high school basically because of that, but I was still able to graduate on time. And and yeah, I did generally pretty good in it. And like I mentioned, I wasn't really doing a lot of art classes or anything like that. Um, just because art really wasn't on my radar that much when I was in high school. It wasn't really until afterwards. I was just sketching like anime characters, cringy, stuff like that.
Me too.
But
Guilty as charged.
Weebs.
you know,
Fucking weaves.
um, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't really get into really pursuing art and drawing until I was about 19 or 20, I'd say, or maybe 18 or 19, probably more
So
accurately.
everyone knows, like, how old are you now?
I'm 25. Oh, I'm about to turn 25.
So you're a very young lad.
Currently, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I gotta be honest. For the position that you're in right now and the security that you have and what's gonna happen in your future, I think you're very young. Like you
Mm,
got it, like you got it down. Cause I remember I maybe in the United States it's kind of different because college lasts like 2 years or 1 year and a
hmm.
half, and you come up out of it at like 21, and
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, you come out of that and you immediately go into a workforce if you want.
Hmm.
And that's not usually the case, but yeah, in your case, you didn't even go to college, right? No, you just like went
No,
straight
no.
to yeah.
Yeah, I took a couple semesters of college, but it was really expensive, and
So yeah, it's
I had to
ridiculous.
pay for it, and I wasn't really that motivated to. I had a better opportunities in the machine shop that I worked in,
Mm,
to just, even though my boss there, he encouraged me that I should go to college, and even my dad did too.
mm,
But even if I didn't follow the whole art career path and everything like that, I could have worked at the machine shop and helped run that place in a similar way to what I'm doing at Watts, really.
yeah.
And that would have been fine too, but ultimately it wasn't the path that I chose.
It's
So did you
pretty
ever?
it's pretty interesting. Sorry. It's pretty interesting how you take it so, and that I think that's the main thing that caught my attention when I met you, is that you take it pretty easy. You're not like an anxiety ball like you say that you are, but
Well, at one time.
yeah, but you usually like take it very easy. Like it's kind of like, yeah, I
Hmm.
could do this or I could do that, and that is something that I find very admirable. I think
Mm.
to just like get into an industry like this, because I feel like if you want to be creative, you don't want to be a ball of wreck, like a ball of
Hmm.
nerves, because otherwise you're not gonna be creative. You gotta be relaxed,
Mm.
kinda.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps to be relaxed for sure. I remember there was some times, there's one specific moment when I was in classes in the school and I was having, just some trouble at that time and I talked to Eric about it and I was just like, I can't focus in class. I can't draw. This is horrible. Like, what's going on? Have you had any experiences like this where it's for extended periods of time, like you try to draw, but you just can't focus and all these things? And Eric said to me, and this just goes to show kind of how young and stupid people are sometimes, and certainly how much I was, and I'm sure as I will be in the future for certain things. But he said, "Well, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting any exercise? And are you eating healthy?" And I said no to every single one of those questions.
That's just- what the fuck are you
And
doing?
yeah. So, that's some important stuff. Even
Oh
I think I
yeah.
was like 21 or 22 at that time.
Oh yeah,
But
so
even when
easy
you're
to do those
young
things.
and like feeling invincible,
Hmm.
um, you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. But
Hmm.
also, like, at least for me, from like a spiritual level too, just like trying to meditate and be present and all that kind of stuff that people are talking about today. That helps a lot. Go watch Alan Watts,
Yeah,
I'd say.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Meditating is it's really kind of like a really nice technique to just like relax for before work. I stopped doing it because I'm an idiot, but I totally should
It's hard to
start
stay
doing it
consistent.
because yeah, it's hard to stay consistent with it. It's kind of like doing app workout. It's kind of like you keep doing it,
Yeah.
it hurts, but it takes you nowhere. Uh,
Yeah.
no, but this one actually does. This one I feel like meditating actually does the results. If you're very, it helps you get to the focus point
Hmm.
on the painting like very fast.
Yeah. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and we were just talking a little bit about like meditation and stuff. And if you have trouble meditating or just like trying to sit down and like focus on your breathing or whatever, a really fun exercise to do, in my opinion, is this concept and idea that you can breathe in and out through different parts of your body, like breathing in through your arm and out through your leg or something like that, or through your neck or whatever. It's like kind of having a mind connection to feel the energy flowing through you a little bit. And you just got to try it. And it's really fascinating stuff, in my opinion. But what I would do, it, and it's kind of difficult, honestly, but it helps you focus with meditating, is to breathe in and out through every one of your fingers. And if you really have that focus to like try to breathe in and
Hmm.
feel that like flow of energy through like your pinky and then your ring finger and then middle finger and then index finger and in and out through every one of those on both hands, then it can really help like get your mind clear to because you have a task to focus on sort of when you're meditating, you know. It's not just
Mm.
like ambiguously just focus on your breathing and your posture or whatever. It's this more active way of doing it, I guess,
I'm
which
kind of
is
I'm
it's kind of fun. Yeah.
I'm kind of confused though. Like, what do you mean by breathing through your finger? Because
Yeah.
fingers don't breathe.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
your skin literally breathes. We get it, but
mhm.
yeah,
um so the concept is like if you're working out, let's say. And have you heard of this idea of like the mind muscle connection
sure, yeah.
when you're working out?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, as you're doing um a wow, why can't I think of it? Just like some exercise like a bench press or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You like try to focus your mind on your pecs and those areas that you're like really utilizing those muscles with.
Oh,
So it's
okay,
the
okay.
same thing through meditation. You're almost kind of focusing your mind and focusing your energy and feeling inside your body this area, like your finger or something like that.
Oh,
And then
okay.
as
Kind
you
of like a
do
part
that,
of your body. Yeah.
yeah, as you do that, and you breathe in and out, you could start to feel this kind of flow happening, which is really, really quite fascinating.
Hmm. Interesting.
And it's just so it's kind of like the mind muscle connection when you're working out, but only with meditating, I'd say.
Hmm.
There's probably other places that you can go to learn much more about that stuff. I
Hmm.
never really learned about any of it formally, really. I just thought it was kind of a cool concept that I discovered when I was trying to do some meditation. And, all that goes back to help, stay focused and being in your art. And you could hopefully find that flow state a little bit easier.
What I was gonna ask before is,
Mhm.
and this is a different subject, but
Mhm.
did you have like a backup plan at any point? Because you mentioned you were thinking of going to college, or you went for a little bit. So was that were you studying something different? Were you thinking of doing something different?
Well, originally when I got out of high school, and I was just really trying to pursue music at that time for the most part. So that was sort of my first creative endeavor. And then eventually I started going to college and taking some classes there because I thought, oh, maybe I should try to learn more about like computer programming because my dad was a, software guy. And so I learned some stuff from him, but I thought maybe I'll go to the college and try to supplement my learning a little bit more with things that I can learn there. And so I did that for a little bit, but that just wasn't the right fit for me really. Um, and then it was after that, after getting out of college, that um, I really spent time trying to focus on drawing and things like that. So from that point forward, I didn't really have a backup plan, honestly. I had my focus set in one direction pretty much. And I guess I maybe knew in the back of my mind a little bit, like, moving out to California by myself and doing all this stuff. I guess if it all goes south, then I can just move back home and that's fine. But I never really even considered that as an option too much because things just kind of worked out, honestly.
Yeah.
you know? Um, so single-minded focus, I'd say, is more prominently what it was for me. And what it continues to be still, for the most part. Just want to get better at drawing, really. That's it.
That's a good objective to have. And like, because a lot of people have different ones in terms of like illustration and freelance.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I want to work for Star Wars. No, I want to work for
Mm,
Disney. I want to work for this company.
yeah.
But
All that stuff it's cool. And I think it's cool to have goals like that. But there's so much of it that I know that's just like, it's all just work, dude. It's probably gonna suck at some point.
yeah,
You know, like
Immediately.
sometimes we have, yeah, yeah, immediately. Uh, Sometimes we have the idea that it's like the grass is always greener.
yeah.
But I think it was Christian did his Sketchy Van interview with Jose Vega,
Hmm.
and he was talking about like, I guess if all this stuff doesn't really work out, I'll just like start a food truck and like make food for people.
Yeah, right.
And like that guy was saying that, and it's just like I feel like that's more or less the way I feel, It's just,
Yeah,
well, if this shit doesn't really work out, then I'll just do something, that's whatever, and I'm still gonna keep drawing.
yeah,
There's nothing that's gonna stop me from doing that.
yeah. If you have the
But
opportunity to do it, why would you stop?
yeah. Um, so yeah, no backup plan, I'd say, and just cruising forward, want to get better at drawing.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Because also, I think we've talked about this before privately, but for me personally, it's always been um, I would love to be an instructor, like in the future,
Mm,
or a teacher in the future. But I feel like it would take it's such a satisfying work. I think so
mm,
that it would take away from the hype of doing illustration for me, and I'm
mm.
somehow afraid of that a little bit. You don't ever
Yeah,
think about that, right? Because for you, it's kind of like this is just the stuff that I like to do, and I do it, and it's gonna like also,
yeah,
nourish me intellectually.
I'd say so.
Mm.
I I don't really think about that kind of stuff because and there's another conversation I was having with Christian the other day. It's so easy to just like think yourself out of doing anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the things that I like about art and what I've started to really fall upon, at least in my life, is just I just like doing this,
Mm.
you know. I just like drawing. I like making images. I like making characters and trying to tell stories and all that stuff. You know, and teaching people is fun too. But, and there's a lot of, I think, my experience in that field is limited still because I'm just getting started with it, really. And there's something that's really rewarding about that and like passing, trying to help pass on the knowledge and be patient with people in the same way that the people you look up to are patient with you
Yeah.
when you're asking all your all your ridiculous questions. Is drawing 10 hours a week enough? Is drawing 20 hours a week enough? It's like, jeez.
I haven't
It's
gotten
like,
many of
what
those,
is it?
but I bet you
Yeah.
do, right?
That's what I it's really funny. There's an old live stream that we did at Watts when I first got to the school. It
Hmm.
was literally the very first class I ever took with Jeff, and it was being filmed. And in the background, I heard myself, for years ago at this point, asking Jeff some dumbass question that only like somebody who's totally new would ask. And I just had to like cringe at the at that.
That's cool
Because
though.
it's, you know,
Yeah.
we're at one time we're all inexperienced and,
Yeah, you're never an
you know,
expert.
yeah, you're asking these questions that don't really matter or you're just kind of searching for these things. But yeah, to
Yeah.
answer your question, I no, I don't really think about that really because
Mm,
I discovered that I just really like creating and
mm,
nothing's ever going to stop me from doing that. Um, you know, because I just do it and
that's
it's
cool.
just sort of part.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think when I met you, you were a bit more into the idea. I think you were kind of like in between whether you're still trying to decide whether you want to do freelance or you wanted to
Mhm.
become to do something else. And
Yeah.
then I think this opportunity of like working at Watts and Jeff talking to you like, hey, there's people that have done this and
Hmm.
Eric has done this, you know, and you could do it
Hmm.
as well. Like I would like to offer you this opportunity in order to do that.
Hmm.
Think about it. And I think that's when you started like thinking about more of it in those terms. But before that, I think like I think that you were wanting to become a freelance
Hmm.
illustrator as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was. And I know there's still time for me to do that and it's something I'm still pursuing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, when I met you, I was really focused on only doing a lot of academic stuff, really. I wasn't really doing anything creative at that time. And
Hmm.
I remember it was really pretty profound time for me. One of my biggest learning experiences was when you told me to do the 365 challenge. And my version of it was just trying to, you know, by your recommendation mostly, was trying to just draw out of your head every day with like a different prompt or something. That's kind of what I ended up coming upon and not really try to focus on doing so much academic stuff. And I realized through doing that challenge that I was a lot more inherently creative than I thought I was because for a while I had this idea like I'm only like a technical person or you know I'll just focus on doing technical art really well and doing you know academics really well
Hmm.
but and there is something really cool in that and I'm still striving to continue my skills in that field in
Yeah.
that area absolutely but just the pure creativity of it you know I think a lot of us are way more creative than we give ourselves credit for and what helped me discover that was doing two things. One is doing a lot more sketchbooking and doing the 365 challenge. Um, so important with just sketching and doing tons of
Yeah.
sketchbooking and getting your creative ideas out there and also practicing your fundamentals and academic stuff in there too. It just gives you a different venue to practice with, and hopefully you can kind of shake it up and learn more through that. But
Yeah.
the creativity is, you know, I don't know. My goals have just they've changed because I sometimes maybe I feel like if you say, oh, I just want to do or I want to be a freelancer or I just want to go work at this studio or that studio or whatever, at least again, everybody's experience is different. But for me in my position, it feels like that kind of locks you out a little bit
Mm, yeah.
of
Yeah.
exploring and experimenting.
Yeah.
And so much of artistic growth comes from experimentation.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you know, if you set yourself in this one narrow path, then you don't have, and this is exactly what was happening with focusing too much on academics is when you focus in this one very specific narrow path, then you lose the opportunity for growth
Yeah.
because you become narrow-minded. But really, I think art is much more of a holistic, at least for me, art is a much more holistic thing. And there's lots of experimentation and playing around and crappy drawings and sketchbooks and ideas and things that have to occur to help you get better. And drawing scribbles in your sketchbook could help you get better at drawing beautiful portraits or, you know, creating characters or doing something like that, you know, but you wouldn't necessarily think it that way. But it,
Yeah.
at least for me, it does. I feel like.
I'd like to dive into that a little more because that is such a huge thing for so many people, and it definitely
Hmm.
was for me. I don't know about you, Felipe, but like I remember being at the atelier. I went to an atelier in London,
Mm.
and I was that guy that was just like pestering all the teachers, asking these dumb questions. But I was so desperate to understand, like, how do I convert this study into
Hmm.
like something from my imagination, something that can
Yeah.
fit my portfolio, that I can get fantasy work from later on.
Hmm.
And there was just no straightforward answer where someone would just say, "Oh, do this," you know. And so for the
Yeah.
longest time, I was just like studying, and in my mind, I was like, "Okay, I think I've got this down where I can like draw from reference."
Hmm.
But just drawing from imagination is something that I don't understand how to do at all.
Hmm.
And I've heard this same problem from a lot of people, and you were kind of touching on this just a
Yeah.
second ago. So, what are your like experiences, and how would you like recommend people to transition from one to the other, or
Hmm.
maybe they should immediately start doing imaginative stuff alongside their
Yeah.
studies, or like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if I was going to give anybody advice as far as your like learning about art, um, it was something I heard another really good artist say at one point, which was to try to work on the creative side and the academic side at the same time. Because at least what was happening to me was I just got really started to get really good at being academic, like you said, drawing from reference and getting that down and everything. But
Yeah.
my creative uh, well was dry. And I feel like you can really learn to be more creative, which is something that maybe seems counterintuitive because people think that you're either similar to if you have skill with drawing, you hear people say that, oh, you're born with
Talented.
that skill.
Yeah.
And maybe that's true to some extent. Again, the world is a mixture of grays, not black and white always. So, um, but you can learn to be creative, like just thinking about how to approach, thinking creatively. And the biggest thing that I would recommend people to do is to do something like the 365 challenge, where at least what worked for me to really jumpstart this for myself was, you have a few rules, which is one is you only draw from your head, and two is you try to keep it under a certain time limit, say 3 hours or something. And you have a prompt list of, 365 words or phrases. And every single day you just choose or you just go down that list, one, two, three, all the way down and try to think of something related to that prompt. So if like, the prompt is uh, pig, that's just the word for day number 5 or whatever. So you start thinking in your mind, like, okay, pig, like, is it like a pig monster? Is it like a pig humanoid creature that has like some weapons? Is it like a cave dwelling pig? Is it a farmer with his pigs? Is there maybe a fat guy at a table who's being a pig and eating something? Or maybe they're at a dinner table and they're eating a pig, or it's at a feast in a Viking longhouse and you know, it's like just by that one word, you start to just think and think and think, and your mind just like starts to expand with all these possibilities of like stuff that could be happening with just this one word.
Yeah.
And then, you take one of those ideas and you roll with it and just try to draw it out from your imagination as best you can. And um, maybe you discover that you don't know how to draw pigs at all. So maybe going and doing a couple studies of some pigs just to get that, like the snout down and stuff like that, could be kind of helpful. Um, and then try to start drawing a little bit. But more often than not, the sketch is going to come out like pretty bad. But that's okay. Every once in a while, you'll do one of these 365 images where will actually come out pretty good, and you'll be really really excited by that. And I remember when I was just starting to do the 365 based off of Felipe's recommendation. Um, oh man, my sketches were so bad. If I can find some of them,
Yeah.
I'll I'll, I'll send them over as well.
Yeah, I'll put them over here and here.
Yeah, but
Because it's
um,
so funny because
yeah,
yeah, it happened to me the same thing. I was just like
yeah,
fucking around at the beginning and doing some studies. My 365 is just a mess because I didn't have any
yeah,
prompts either. So I was every
mhm,
day trying to figure it out what to draw. And sometimes it would
right,
be garbage and sometimes it would be work related, which is
hmm,
something that I learned that maybe it's not the best idea because it gets boring.
yeah, hmm,
But as long as you're kind of like doing something every day, yeah, as you said, there's gonna be at least a few images there that you're gonna
hmm,
be very proud of.
yeah. Absolutely. And oftentimes, what I found when I was just starting to work on creative work more is a lot of those sketches, those things that started as sketches, eventually became more finished work that I ended up doing. And it's just a great way to learn because you're learning creativity, you're learning drawing from imagination, you're iterating on ideas and designs and things, and you're just expanding your knowledge and your visualization skills, which is really important as an artist, is the ability to just like close your eyes and think about something and try to imagine like what's happening there.
Yeah.
And to even I remember again Felipe telling me one time is like close your eyes and try to imagine like the noises and the smells and the things that are happening all in that, in that scene that you're able to do. And if you could do that
Yeah.
right from the beginning, then that'll help, especially if you want to draw from imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is you really that's really helped me. And I'm not the best at drawing from imagination, but I'm getting there. I'm working on my skills, and they're getting better with every drawing that I do. But
Yeah.
it is quite fun to be able to do cool stuff out of your head.
Yeah.
That's great. That's like the thing about studying and having like the reference in front of you is like you know where you're going pretty much. It's like a guide. It's like having guide wheels on your bike or something because
Yeah,
you know if it's wrong, you know it's wrong because you can compare it, right? Or you've
exactly.
got a teacher right there to tell you it's wrong. But I remember like what I started doing when I was in school. I after I did my studies for the day,
Mhm.
I'd like go home or on the way home on the bus, I'd try and like try and draw the same thing from memory, and
Yeah,
that helped me quite a bit. And yeah,
yeah.
I think it's just a muscle you've got to try and work, just like everything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah.
You've really got to put the time in every day to do stuff from
Mhm.
imagination and memorize stuff and like really observe and try and memorize while you're observing, while you're doing the studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I think in a lot of ways it's more straightforward than people think sometimes. I remember reading in I think creative illustration from Loomis. Uh it was something along the lines of doing studies is really important and really, helpful, but you won't really start knowing what you need to learn until you start trying to make images out of it. Because
Yeah.
once you start trying to make images, you'll start to see like all your flawed areas and areas that you don't know. So like going back to that pig example, imagine that you're like trying to draw a thing out of your head with pigs or whatever, and it comes out horrible, and then you just say, okay, this week I'm gonna practice drawing pigs, and again their bodies in the round and curly tail and all the forms and overlaps and everything, and then draw like 100 pigs and think about how much better it's going to be after you've drawn 100 pigs and started to memorize those forms. And if you do like something new like that every week, then you'll get really strong at that.
Are you
That's the plan, at least.
looking forward to I mean, you already answered that question, but don't you want to like at a certain point, just have the entire day to do that and not like be an instructor?
um
I think it's a difficult question. I don't want to put you
yeah,
in a corner cuz
yeah,
I
yeah.
I know
No,
that
I see what
you're
you mean.
yeah.
I'm Again, honestly, like I haven't really thought about that too much. Like I've fantasized in ways like, man, if I could just be like back home living with my parents and doing drawing all day, then I'd be improving so much faster.
Hmm.
Or at least it seems that way. But like when you think about the realities, like, well, I'd be all alone. I wouldn't have any environment around. I wouldn't have any professional instructors around. I wouldn't, have everything that I have here. Then it's like maybe you wouldn't really be
It would be harder
doing as good
somehow.
as you'd think.
Yeah.
And in the same way,
That is
it's
such a tough choice.
It
yeah.
is cuz it
Uh,
all has their up and downs, just their
but
pros and cons.
yeah, I think when you're out persevering on your own, then it's a little bit, you kind of get that satisfaction too that it's like, I've done a lot of good shit for myself, man. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
And keep working on that. But like as far as that goes, no, I wouldn't say I really do, because I get that time on the weekend,
Mhm.
you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I get like basically 2 full 8-hour days to work on anything I want. And man, that is, I really look forward to that, where it's just, man, I could just come into the studio and work and uninterrupted by other things. That for me is just, it feels so golden.
Mm.
It feels so good for me,
Yeah.
And
The anticipation.
and yeah, it's like I get excited about that, because like, oh, I'm gonna be able to make so much progress and whatnot. And but it's not really even, the instructing, I think, and is fulfilling too. The stuff that's more boring, honestly, is like the just day job,
Mm.
all the technical work on the computer,
Yeah.
which it fills up most of my time. But even then, it's like I still look forward to that time that I get after work to work on stuff.
Mm.
And you know, at least as far as I'm where I'm at right now, this is just what I have. And it's a really, in my opinion, a beautiful and awesome thing. And later down the line, there'll come a time when, I will be able to grind 8 hours a day on my own ambitions or work for clients or what have it. But, that's not right now for me. And I can see that. And I can see that where I'm at right now is
Mm.
the perfect opportunity to learn the exact things that I need to be learning for the things that I want to be doing in the future. And it's an opportunity that people don't get really. And I'm lucky enough to have stumbled into it. And that I'm really grateful for. And that's just kind of where I'm at right now. There's enough time in life for all these things that we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, I mean, a lot of people say that life is super short, but I think it's the perfect length. It has enough time to
Yeah.
just like do whatever you need to do, um, without being like, I mean, squandering, you know?
Hmm.
But anyways, Travis,
Yes.
On
always a
that note,
pleasure talking to you. I
Hmm.
think that you're a brilliant young man, not so young anymore. You're kind of old now. You're 25. You're kind of all half dead.
Hmm. That's
And
okay.
on your way out.
no, but I think that you got a really cool future ahead. And I think also that I really admire the, I don't know, like the calmness and kind of like how chill you are with your future. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do that, and you don't overcome, like, make it into a huge deal.
Mm.
And yeah, thank you so much for
Cool.
your
Thanks for
time. I
coming
know
on.
that you're a super busy guy, and
To some degree, unless I feel like I need a break, in which case I'll take one.
yeah,
That's fair.
But yeah, thanks for having me on and chatting a little bit. It was pretty fun.
yeah,
That's
man.
great.
Whenever you want, that is not being recorded.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna cut that shit out of there.
yeah, yeah.